everyone. I'm Peggy Northrup. I'm Chief Content Officer of Radivision and host of Chiconomics. Welcome to Season 2 of our series celebrating women founders and CEOs who inspire us with their superpowers. I am so honored to be here today with Trish Costello, CEO and founder of Portfolio Funds, and Laura Yesis, CEO of Bone Health Technologies. They're just such an excellent example of what can happen when women invest in each other. So we're going to be talking about that. I want to do some very quick introductions, and you guys stop me if I'm getting anything wrong. So Portfolio is the most active investor in women's health in the United States, with a total of 46 investments in healthcare companies from seed stage to pre-IPO. Portfolio closed the world's first venture capital fund focused exclusively on women's health in 2018 and is now up to 3 funds. Is that right, Trish? 3 funds. Mm-hmm. Excellent. And Laura Yesis, CEO of Bone Health Technologies, is a serial entrepreneur who was formerly CEO at SyncThink, Catch, which was acquired by Apple, SugarSync, also acquired, and she has led multiple successful brands at Checkpoint, Netscape, and Yahoo. So thank you both so much for being here. Did I leave out anything super important? You're both so incredibly impressive. I cannot do justice to who you really are. So first, I just want to talk about the opportunities in women's healthcare. And Trish, Portfolio has quickly become a leader in investing in women's health. But I admit, I thought that, of course, everybody's investing in innovations in devices and technologies that would benefit 50% of the population. Of course, this would already be a very, very crowded space, but you've become a leader in what, like 4 years, 5 years?
That's true. And of course you would think that because it just makes sense. But the truth, Peggy, is that most investors, especially at this early stage in new technologies and private companies, most of those who are investors are men. About 95% of them are men. So when men are putting that money to work, they're investing in what really, attracts them. And the thought of investing in, menopause or painful periods or osteoporosis or any of these types of things that have an interest, or an interest to us that will enhance our lives are something that they have no knowledge about and really no interest in. As one man told me who is a big healthcare investor, he said, is there really even solutions for these kinds of things? There's kind of an ick factor, he said, around these kinds of companies. And so, no, when women aren't at the table, women's health actually draws the short straw.
Right. Well, and what's weird about osteoporosis, and Laura, you should address this. This is a problem for men too. Yes, it's women, but it's anybody who ages has thinning of their bones. Yes. So can you talk about just the scale of that problem?
Yeah, the scale is enormous. There are 52 million Americans with osteopenia and another 12 million with osteoporosis. Osteopenia is really like the first stage of bone loss. And you're at increased risk of fracture during osteopenia. The risk is higher in osteoporosis, but it turns out that there are more fractures that happen in the osteopenia stage, basically because there's so many more people with osteopenia. So osteopenia, you are at risk of fracture. And unlike the other kind of chronic conditions of aging, like cardiovascular disease or high blood pressure, where pretty much almost everyone is accumulating some cholesterol in their arteries and your arteries get stiffer, right? Prior to OsteoBoost, there were no early interventions. So, and as with many things, intervening early gives you the best possibility of a good result. So, men do get osteoporosis. It tends to happen later because they have more peak bone mass to start. So when they lose, they tend to catch up with them later. But it's one of those things where if men get it, their outcomes are worse. It's a bit of a reverse discrimination. They're undertreated for osteoporosis.
That's the case that I think is so important when we start looking at this, is that in nearly every case where we're assisting and investing in health for women, it helps the entire family, but it also enhances men's health. And you see that in longevity, where we're studying the health of ovaries. I mean, this is the holy grail. If we figure this out, longevity will be figured out, for everyone. And so, the whole osteoporosis piece is so critical. And like you say, Laura, I mean, the answer has to be early intervention. And you can get the DEXA test and see there's a problem, but if there's not a workable solution, what does it mean? We try to just enhance our health in other ways, but this is really such an important addition.
Right.
And Laura, can you talk about the actual device? Because I'm not sure. People know that there's a drug you can take, right? I mean, we've all gone to the doctor and they say, well, maybe we'll start you on, there are a number of drugs, but they have side effects. This is a non-drug intervention.
Yeah. So we do know that in terms of lifestyle interventions, one thing that really helps your bones is high impact exercise, right? So jumping and running and, pretty intense weightlifting. Frankly, things that it's harder for older adults to do. And even if you do it, maybe you can't do it every day. And so that mechanism of action, you're stimulating your bones with mechanical forces. And NASA funded a body of research for astronauts looking at using vibration technologies to improve bone density for astronauts in space, because they lose bone density rapidly in space. Use it or lose it. So the science is good, but these platforms are very hard to comply with. They were never able to achieve an FDA clearance. And so our innovation is we're taking this precisely calibrated vibration mechanism, 30 hertz, 3G of force, but we're putting it in a belt. And what does that mean? It's a wearable. Wearable means you can wear it while you're walking the dog or while you're cooking. So it's easy to comply with. And then the vibration is concentrated on the vulnerable anatomy, the hips and lumbar spine. And these are places where, hip fractures are deadly. 20 to 30% of people don't survive a year after a hip fracture. And vertebral compression fractures are very, very painful and debilitating. When we talk about little old ladies, or why do they get little? They didn't start little. Their vertebrae compressed. And that kyphotic hunchback position, which is very, very painful and dysfunctional, that happens because the front of the vertebrae are compressing. And that's from osteoporosis. So it's really important that we strengthen the hips and vertebrae. Right. And we showed in a rigorous clinical trial, a sham-controlled trial, that we reduced the rate of bone loss, by well over 80%. So the active patients were clinically, quite stable, and the sham patients, or placebo patients, were essentially losing at about 3% a year, which is the reality of postmenopausal bone loss. And so we were very excited by this, and based on that result, we got this FDA clearance. This is the first time FDA has ever approved an intervention for bone density that's not a drug.
Amazing. And
it's the first ever intervention for bone density approved specifically for osteopenia. So we're super excited.
And that's so great.
And, I have to say, Portfolio was in early. Okay. Now, it's one thing, I welcome the people who are going to invest in us now. That's really important, because that scale of funding will help us commercialize, but we wouldn't be where we are today if it weren't for our early investors. So, when Portfolio invested in Bone Health Technologies, we didn't have the results. We didn't have FDA clearance. We didn't even have the results from our pivotal trial. We had some good science behind why this was important, but what we did have was the Portfolio team understood that this was important to women, and that the fact that there wasn't a lot of activity in the space wasn't because it wasn't important. It's because there weren't the people with the right focus and attention. And so that investment is what got us to be able to finish the pivotal trial, which then allowed us to apply to FDA, which now allows us to go on and, we have to commercialize. We have a lot more work to do. We're at the beginning still, but the very, very beginning was when Portfolio sort of saw that possibility. And
Yes.
I cannot express enough appreciation.
That's so fantastic. And when you think about all the other things that women need to have done, all the other interventions in our health that need to happen, it's so important for women, especially to get that message about investing and why they should invest in women-led companies and why they should invest in the changes that they want to see in the world, to quote what Trish always says. So Trish, maybe why don't you talk a little bit about just the opportunities that women have to invest in something like Portfolio?
Yes, and so what makes this different, really, for women investors is you could be an angel investor where you need to go out and find these companies. You need to find Laura, individually, to be able to make an investment, and that's really difficult because you need to be able to see what's happening across the country, find those companies that have real promise and in the future that can impact our lives, do all of the research and those types of things. And what we've done with Portfolio, which was really different, is to create a whole fund that you can go into in women's health. And then we have those relationships with Laura and others and do the diligence and the research. And then, every year we'll pick about 10 to 12 companies that we invest in on your behalf and then manage those investments and add value, during the lifetime of those companies until, they're acquired or they go public. And so that's really what Portfolio does is create venture funds in those spaces. And we'll back from early stage, like we went in with Laura's company at seed or pre-seed. It was very early, all the way to companies like a Maven Clinic that's now, a pre-IPO, later stage company. But it's very important, especially at that early stage, because, Laura, we're appreciative of what, you're building, because even though all of the results weren't in, we were able to look at this and say, if we can find a solution, an early solution, look how it's going to change our mothers' lives, our lives as we age, it will really make a difference. And so to put our capital, behind it is really the solution. Oh, and just one more thing, Peggy, it's important to us that women come in and be able to get started without feeling like they have to put huge amounts of money to work. So in our funds, you can make a $10,000 investment, and that will go across 10 to 12 companies. So that's not the average, but that's that kind of starting level where you can get in and get your feet wet and see what it's like to invest in companies like Laura's.
Right, right. And those of us who have invested with Portfolio, and full disclosure, I have, know that there are opportunities to learn. You learn so much. You learn so much. You can be on a due diligence team. You can really get in the weeds in some of these companies. And I have learned so much that I then apply in my professional life. So we were talking yesterday to someone from the Angel Capital Association. That's exactly the learning opportunity that you have for your career is spectacular when you do that kind of investing, even if you're just doing it at this tiny, tiny, tiny way.
Yes.
Are there things just sort of generally that you wish you could go back to your early self as you're building your companies and say, boy, I wish I had known this on day one, or at least on day 5, and didn't have to learn it on day 705. So is there anything that you wish you could, not a do-over, but just advice you'd like to pass along so other people don't make the same errors?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing I would do maybe differently is get involved in startups earlier. So I spent about 20 years in big companies, and I've been in startups since then. I'm having a lot more fun, and I feel like I get to have more impact. So that's one learning.
Yeah, that's
one
awesome.
one thing I always tell other startup founders, because I do some advising, is, fundraising is a challenging thing for most startup CEOs, right? And one of the common mistakes is not targeting the right investors. And I think this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with, if for early stage funding, you need investors who really understand and care about your problem. And so, I think that's a big part of why portfolio was a fit. But I think that's a big learning for me in terms of, how to be as effective and efficient as possible with fundraising.
Right.
Mhm.
That's great. What about you, Trish? Anything that you wish you could go back and say to yourself in 2015?
Yeah, or even way before then.
Before then?
I think we probably spent too much time figuring out in the early days, even before then, how do men do it? How do the guys do it? And and so I go back 20 years, and I would look at best practice is important, but I think the change I would make is understanding earlier that the strengths we bring to this as women are a unique competitive advantage. We don't need to do it the way it's been done traditionally. We need to recreate the way investing is done, recreate the way entrepreneurial companies are built in a way that uses women's great strengths of community, networks, knowledge, and expertise. And don't think there's any compromise that has to be made because of that. So, go out there, build it the way it works for you, and build your teams in the way it works for you. And then, as Laura said, find the right money to back you that really appreciate and understand those great strengths you're bringing to the marketplace.
I love that because, of course, the theme of Chiconomics is that women bring these superpowers to this space. So, if you had to describe your superpower, if you could make it into a sentence, what would your superpower be, Trish?
Mm. I believe it. I believe that it's. I never say stop. I will find the way to get around, get under, get over. Any boulder in my path.
I have watched that happen.
All right,
How about you,
I
Laura?
should have answered faster, because I was going to say, persistence. And Trish knows, she's been watching the company for a few years. We've had challenges and we've persisted, and that persistence has paid off.
It's paid off, Laura. Boy, has it. You're right
Yeah.
there now.
It's very, very exciting. So let's wrap up by talking about what you're really excited about in 2024. I mean, Laura, you just got FDA approval. As I mentioned, I've got people texting me to say, where is it? I need this. Can you put me in touch with the founder? It's like, wait. First they have to manufacture a bunch of them. But talk about what you're excited about for 2024.
I mean, you really hit the nail on the head. I've been with the company almost 3.5 years of product and clinical trials and this FDA process with all of its challenges. And now I just cannot be more excited to bring this to market. We're just excited to bring this to patients. Get on the list, www.bonehealthtech.com. We're just really excited to get this in the hands of patients and doctors who need it. So.
Wonderful. I'm going to be on your list because I'm right at that edge. So I'm very, very excited about it myself. Trish, what about you? What are you excited about for 2024? I mean, things in the investing market are maybe turning around. Maybe it's going to be a better year. What do you think?
I think 2024 is going to be just a great year for investing. Our companies, because most of them are run by women, have real resilience. Those companies, the entrepreneurs are used to, being capital efficient, and they're just stronger. And many of them are going out into the market. And so we're really thrilled to be able to help them get their products into the hands of women. We're in 46 states and 18 countries just with our investors in these companies. So, we can be, a real assist in that development. And the other part of this, Peggy, is that those companies that are, really poised to be acquired or to have an initial public offering, so go public, are also out there. And I think we're going to see, if not perhaps toward the latter part of this year, but we're going to start seeing some major exits and IPOs. And this will be really the first time in the women's health market where you see billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar companies going public and actually creating huge amounts of wealth for their investors. So that's that other part of it. We're doing this for impact and to enhance our lives, but we also are doing this because we know there's a wonderful chance for returns as well.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, ladies, thank you so much for being here with me today. And I really appreciate you participating in Chiconomics. For those of you who are watching, you can find much more information on radavision.com and in the Chiconomics channel in particular. Portfolio Funds is one of those organizations that is empowering a lot of women entrepreneurs and supporting their growth. So there's information about Portfolio on our site as well. And good luck to you, Laura. I can't wait to see what else you achieve. It's so awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you so much.
Bye-bye.